My name is Laura and I'm 26 years old, and in 2013 I was diagnosed with depression. And this is my story. Okay, so I've wanted to talk about this topic for quite a long time on this channel now. My main reason for holding back has been fear of judgment from others, which is kind of funny now I think about it, because it's not like I'm posting nude photos online or confessing to some crime, so I shouldn't let the fear of others stop me. I think the other thing that's holding me back is I'm worried I won't express this story in the way I want to tell it. There are so many people out there going through the same thing, and I want to show that it's okay to tell your story, that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to ask for help. Depression and mental health is a topic that's very close to my heart. It's a topic that affects millions of people around the world, but it's not nearly spoken about enough. I do believe as a whole that the views towards mental health is starting to get better, but I do feel that there is a sense of stigma and isolation that hasn't been fully addressed yet. So for those of you that aren't in the loop, depression is a serious mental illness that affects how a person thinks, behaves, and acts. It can cause feelings of sadness and loss of interest of activities that the person previously first enjoyed. One thing that depression has got going for it is it does not discriminate. It doesn't care if you are a man, a woman, it doesn't care about your race, your age, anything. And it's actually estimated that around 300 people worldwide are affected by depression. And I am one of those 300 million people. I have been struggling with depression for many years now. It's not really something that I talk about that often, except for to the people that I love the most. But I want to change that. I want to start a conversation with you, the person who is watching this, about mental health. I want people to know that it's okay to talk about these things and that they are not alone. I know that talking about feelings in general can be kind of hard. It's never easy to admit if you're struggling, but it's always important to reach out for help. I do believe that one of the reasons why depression is so hard to talk about is because of this stigma attached to it. There are still many people out there that believe depression is a sign of weakness, or that it's not even a real illness. But the truth is, depression is very much real, and it can be quite a debilitating illness, and it does require treatment, just like any other illness. As for my personal experience with depression, so my first time facing this was in my late teens, during the very stressful time of exams at school. I unfortunately went to school where, quite frankly, I just didn't fit in. I was very shy growing up. I was a bit of a tomboy, and that meant I was quite an easy target for bullies. I got called names, had my stuff hidden. One boy wiped his whiteboard out on my jumper. I was pinned up by the neck in the school toilets by a girl. Yeah, it was a pretty intense time. So that, combined with exam stress, gave me the first symptoms of depression. I found that I started to become far more irritated by small things, and I slowly started to withdraw from my family. My parents did try and get me help. They made me go and see a doctor, but I think because at that time I was being forced to go, I was less receptive to help. I remember being sent to counselling sessions, and when I went there, I lied to the lady, saying that I felt much better my first couple of sessions, and for some silly reason she believed me and she cancelled my follow-up counselling sessions, when the truth was far from it. I was not alright. I think I just did this because I didn't want to be there, and like I said before, being forced to get help, I just wasn't ready to accept it at that point. So I stopped the counselling sessions, and my parents came up with the idea that I could move to a different school for sixth form. I really liked the idea of this, and I agreed that a fresh start was probably best for me. I ended up going to a school which I had already made some friends with the summer prior. This literally made the transition so much easier going to the new school. I felt happy with my studies. I even got my first job. I was surrounded by the most friends I'd ever had, and I just felt like I was starting to find my voice. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and school is coming to an end, and it's time to decide what I wanted to do with my life. So I made the decision to go to university. I don't know what it was just like all of my friends were going, and it seemed like the done thing back then. So I applied to some unis, not really expecting much, and then bam, results day came. And I got the grades to go to the university of my choice. I saw this as a proper chance for independence and to meet new people. I kind of assumed it would just be like sixth form all over again, except the difference being that I would be living with my friends. But unfortunately, after a month at university, that is when my mental health started to take a really big dive. Unfortunately, university was not what I thought it was going to be, and I felt more alone than ever. I found that the friends I'd actually made within the first month of me being at university had all dropped out due to different reasons, which then meant I had no friends, and I was trying to make new friends in already pre-formed friendship groups. My week basically would consist of me going to my lectures, studying, completing assignments, sleeping, occasionally eating, and that was it. Repeat. There was no socialization, there was no going to clubs, there was no time for myself to experience the world. I can remember I kind of had this tactic and set plan that I would do, which is basically whenever I'd finished an assignment or finished studying, I would get my phone and I would plug in my headphones and I would listen to some music and basically try and force myself to go to sleep. For me, this just made unbearable days go a lot faster, and it helped to switch my brain off. I was incredibly shy with my roommates. I just unfortunately didn't feel like I fit in, and again, one girl that I felt quite close to at the time, she unfortunately dropped out as well, so I just lost another friend there. But the shyness really took over to the point where I didn't even want to be in the kitchen at the same time with them. I didn't want to cook meals at the same time with them, so I would purposely go and cook my meals when I knew there was no one in the kitchen, and then I would take my meal back to my bedroom and I would eat it in my room because I was just too shy and just didn't want to be around anyone at that time. I ended up losing weight, a lot of weight. Eating became slowly but surely more of a chore rather than a pleasure, and overall I just felt that the colours of the world just didn't seem as vibrant anymore. It's also worth noting that I was struggling with my identity at the time. I didn't have much dating experience before university. In fact, I had absolutely zero. I never even had kissed anyone. I'd never been on dates with anyone at that point. But at that point in time, I was questioning my sexuality. I did have a fear of coming out to my friends and my family in case they just didn't accept me for who I was. So all of these thoughts, all of these feelings combined together just made me really not feel myself anymore and felt quite lonely and isolated. I found that my thoughts were starting to run away from me, and they were usually ending up like some dark, sad tragedy novel, probably like something out of Shakespeare. Overall, I just felt completely paralysed by life. There were brief moments, mind you, where I felt like the sun shone through the clouds and there were moments of happiness. A few of these were I came out to my parents, which was a huge weight off my shoulders. I managed to make a couple of new friends at university, so I didn't feel quite as alone, and I started my first relationship. One piece of advice I would give you about university is that if you are someone who is prone to depression or poor mental health, I would make sure I have lots of coping strategies in place for when you're at university. As in hindsight, I think I was really poorly prepared for that. In my second year of university, I was coming to the end of my foundation degree, and it was time to decide what I wanted to do with my future. In my head, I can remember kind of toing and throwing quite a lot. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to stay and do another year of university, which would mean I would have a full degree, or whether I just simply couldn't hack it anymore and would drop out and try something new. So I decided I was going to change universities and move to one closer to home. This was something that was very much needed at the time because I was also going through my first ever breakup. Me and my girlfriend at the time just were struggling with our mental health, and the relationship just wasn't working anymore. So by going to my new university, this meant that I was actually close to home and I could drive to and from my lectures and go back home again, meaning I was now living back home. This meant that I finally had the support network again that I'd been craving and missing so much at university those first 2 years. I had two close friends of mine that had chosen not to go to university, so it meant I could see them on the weekends. It all just made so much sense to me to move to that university. It was around that time that I also started counselling, and I also started taking medication. Whilst I admit the counselling wasn't really for me, I found that the medication did really help. I just found that at the time, the cloud that was covering my head was just too much, and I needed something to try and help lift me out through it. Those two decisions, to change university and to start medication, absolutely changed my life so much for the better. I went from a massive low to starting to feel alive again. My mum made sure that there was always food in the house and that there was meals prepared for me even when I didn't feel like eating, and this ensured that my weight slowly but surely started to increase. I got to see friends at the weekend and study during the week. My sleep pattern started to improve, and overall the voice in my head started to get happier. That change in university was amazing for me. The people were so different and so much happier and positive. I remember being really nervous my first day of university, as I didn't know where to go or who everyone was. Luckily, one of the modules I'd taken, which was marine biology, just to clarify, I studied wildlife conservation at university. Anyways, there was this trip at the end of summer, just before the academic year started. This trip was 1 week away doing field studies in Cornwall. This trip totally changed my view on people completely. I can remember I got on the bus and I was really nervous and I was too shy to talk to anyone. And we drove for a couple of hours and eventually we got to a gas station. When I got off, I was approached by these group of people and they just started a conversation with me. I can remember at the time being really grateful that they did this, because I was just too shy and too nervous to start a conversation at that point in time, but they were all just so welcoming. That trip was the start of me getting the spark for life back again. I was surrounded by nice, kind and outgoing people. I was studying a subject I was passionate about. I was out spending most of my days at the beach for a week on end. It was just something that was really refreshing for me. I actually found that year flew by, and I started to get back into things that I really enjoyed again. I started taking photos, I started going out in nature, spending time with friends, becoming more sociable. Overall, I just felt my life coming back to normal. But the highlight of my year was definitely when I went to Cuba. This trip was going to be 2 weeks of camping in the heartland of Cuba. No toilets, no running water, fresh food, and I was going to be spending my days exploring caves, going into the rainforest and scuba diving the sea. I can remember my mum at the time was really nervous. She was quite scared that if something went wrong, I was very far from home, or that I wouldn't eat anything and my diet would start to go out the window. But in my head, I kind of felt like this was a chance for me to redeem myself. For all those times where I felt so sad and alone, or that I couldn't make it out of bed, this was just my chance to prove that I could do life and I could do it on my own. I can remember I pushed myself to get my scuba diving qualification, which was a challenge in itself. The time of year when I took my scuba diving qualification was really cold, and on the day where I had my test, it was actually snowing and I was in a quarry. Once I had finished my scuba diving exercise, I looked down at my hands and my hands were absolutely freezing cold and stiff. My lips were actually blue. It was just far too cold, but luckily I persevered. I got my qualification and I was off to Cuba. And I can honestly say those 2 weeks were the best weeks of my entire life so far. There's something about waking up on a sunny beach that can warm even the coldest of hearts. I was surrounded by fun and adventurous people. I got to experience a new culture and see some really amazing wildlife. Every day I had literally the most healthiest breakfast on the planet. I had eggs, fruit, bread, water, and that was it. And it was just so healthy and so delicious. And I think back now, and had I not changed universities, met the people I did, and travelled to the places I've been, I would have a totally different view of university and probably life in general. But I think now, knowing what I know, it was simply the fact that I had nothing in place to cope. I just didn't know how to get myself out of that hole I was in. But now I see how much things like food, sleep, socialization, conversations, and expressing yourself helps. Now I just feel like I understand everything a little bit better. I remember reading this quote one night when I couldn't sleep and I was scrolling far too much through social media, and it said that the only journey in life is the journey within. I don't think I really understood what it meant until now. Looking back on how far I've come and all the experiences I've had so far, those things have definitely changed me and have really shown me how beautiful life can be. And I need to get out of here because I think it's about to rain. See you in the next one.